welcome to Frank On Camnet. These are but somber days. The elections are over, and the new government of President Hakainde Hichilema is in place. A humiliation of the PF government, especially President Edgar Lungu, sent waves beyond Zambia. I think everybody was asking, what is happening in Zambia? Yes, history will be written down the line that Zambia set yet another record of changing a government peacefully. The PF government presided over poor governance, something my guest tonight is going to delve into. My guest on the show tonight is MITI, advocate of good governance and representing Alliance for Community Action. Good evening, Laura, and welcome.
Good evening, Frank.
First, accolades for all the great things that you have done, and we'll be talking about some of these issues and indeed Alliance for Community Action. I did open by saying these are somber days. I want you to reflect on what has been going through your mind vis-a-vis the levels of corruption, vis-a-vis the huge figures we've been reading about. And some of us were closer to our colleagues who are in these institutions tell us, yes, we can't tell you the exact figures right now, but they're massive. Figures that only relate to millionaires, billionaires. And this is Zambia, a poor country, practically, potentially rich, but practically poor. What has been going through your mind when you read about, all this?
I think first of all, it's been to wonder what would have happened if PF had won. For some reason, I can't get that out of my mind because while I think a lot of us had worked to ensure that in this election there would be a new government, and to ensure that the trajectory we were on, which seemed to be headed over the escarpment, would be stopped. Somehow we didn't completely dare hope. I mean, we hoped, but we didn't dare believe. We had to wait until the day of the election. But when you say what's going through your mind, you wonder how any government that would be so harmful to its own country. So the worst thing about the Edgar Lungu administration was the systematic and systemic breakdown of systems, of laws, the systematic stealing. It feels like armed robbery. It seems like a battery. And you ask yourself why. The question of corruption is not new. You hear corruption across the country, but I don't think any country in any government in such a short time has had such ill intent towards its own people. And so you ask yourself, the question is why? What did poor Zambia do? Why did you hate the country almost to this extent? And so that is the sense that you get. Of course, you also get the sense of relief that at the very minimum, we hope we've stopped digging. At the very minimum, we've taken these people out of office. And then we can begin to regroup, to see how bad things are. But it's depressing. It's depressing to think that your people, a government elected by people, by citizens, can end up in the situation that this one did.
It takes a breath away. The question is, how did we arrive here? How did the systems break? How did the Zambian people be captured? But the people they put in government were supposed to be their servants. How was this allowed?
They say the breakdown of a country or destruction of a country is not an event, it's a process.
Yeah.
And the problem with processes is that you do not notice the small incremental changes, and which is what happened with this particular government. Because I remember, sitting here, right from, in fact, 2001 is when I began to say, never elect President Sata. You know, I always used to say, do not elect, we should never elect presidents, because I always knew that President Sata was fundamentally violent. Okay, not maybe himself, but he had fundamentally violent politics. He was also fundamentally anarchical, you see. And President Sata was my friend, so he would come into my office even, and I was then much younger, and say to me, you know, to become votela, but I always thought, I think Zambia paid the price for two things. One was the death of presidents. You know, like something that was beyond our hands. So the death of President Mwanawasa. Now, President Mwanawasa is on two counts. One, the way President Mwanawasa came into office was also not very good for Zambia, because he came in as a very weak president, as a very insecure president. So he used his first term to secure himself and also made some decisions that were not very good for Zambia. Remember, he refused to change the constitution. He's the one who started appointing members of opposition into government. But by the time he came to his second term, he had come into his own and was doing very well. You always wonder what would have happened had he not died and overseen a smooth transition of power. You see, so we were on an upward trajectory, and then boom, he dies. We end up with President Banda, who President Mwanawasa had put in office only because he was insecure.
Absolutely.
So President Banda was only put as vice president because he was supposed to have no ambition. You know what I mean? He was supposed to be grateful for this position. Having refused to change the constitution, President Mwanawasa dies and leaves us with this president who didn't expect to be president. And that's when the downward spiral started into corruption. Of course, Zambians use their democratic right, remove him. But then put in this populist President Sata, who two things, was anarchical, was violent, and well. So we never really did have a President Sata, if you think about it, because he was too unwell to run the country. And then, at the same time, his anarchy and violence began to be seen right from the start. And for a large part of his country, you remember the contestation, Winter to be president, who was to be, it was a matter who would take over. Long story short, he dies, and we end up with President Lungu, who essentially had no idea he could ever be president. We should have known right from that Congress in Mulungushi how lawless a President Lungu was. But remember, you know, Zambia has this whole emotional whatever, you know, give him a chance. And I remember even then when a few voices began to say, this man is the wrong president. It was a case of give him a chance. I remember that thing, give him a chance. You can't criticize a person before he's gone into office. But you look at their history, you look at where they're coming from. So ultimately, President Lungu never even tried to run this country. I think that's the problem. He never even tried. You know, he sat in that office, allowed runaway lawlessness, around runaway corruption, hardly was largely absent. Do you remember? You know, like he would not speak about important matters. He never spoke off the cuff about anything. You know, like if you ask yourself, what did the president think about education? You come up with a blank. What did he think about mining himself? Not reading a speech to parliament. What were his thoughts? Where was he taking us? He did. But there are other people. You know, like if you look at President Banda was not particularly hands-on either. But he surrounded himself with a good team. So while he was carrying out corruption, his corruption tended to be creaming off the top. He didn't take the very milk like these people did. And because he had a team around him, he had a team that was strong. The country was doing very well in its fundamentals. But with President Lungu, it's himself, surrounds himself with very weak people, and then he gets captured by cadres. 2-3 years we're already going downward. Then the whole, because they want to hold on to power, they begin to mess with the law. They want to legislatively change the country so that it becomes a dictatorship. But I think ultimately the biggest problem we had was a president at the top that should never have been president. Like you said, maybe we should blame ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, especially in 2016, because by 2016 it was already clear.
Yeah.
You see, but we insisted and let him finish another term. And in that term, in these last 5 years, we were going backwards in long strides, and essentially that's how we ended up at a point in which Zambians were just panicking.
Tell me, Laura, here's a man who openly told us that he had no vision, okay? At the same time, he rode on a ticket of humility. It turned out that practically he was not a humble guy. We knew, you've just made reference to 2016, we still went on to elect, this man. And if the youths had never risen up this time, we could still have ended up with this man. My question is, did he outwit us, or we are okay with mediocrity? What is it?
I think we didn't quite think it through.
Yeah.
I doubt we're going to elect another weak president again.
Yeah.
You see, we had become so accustomed to the fact that we could remove presidents when we wanted. So our democracy was growing. And we didn't really envision that a president could be as bad as President Lungu. So instead, he didn't have a vision. Nobody really listened. When we saw that violent congress in Lungu Shikabwe, nobody really bothered.
Yeah.
And those that did try to sound the warning were then attacked. You see, because everybody just thought, come on, what is the worst that can happen? I think that's how Zambians felt. What's the worst that can happen? And yet, the worst did happen. And so we find ourselves now handing over a country to a Hichilema presidency that is entirely broken. You see, so we have a country where we have taught a whole generation lawlessness. We have a whole generation of young people who've grown up believing that a cadre can come and tell you to give him money for no reason. We have a whole generation who've been frisked, harassed. They've seen cadres drive on the wrong side of the road. They've seen ministers who make no logical sense, can't articulate issues. You know, like all you heard from ministers was, we will come, we will win, we will this, attacking the opposition, preventing citizens from gathering. But again, if you ask yourself, where were they taking the country? Nowhere. So this generation of young people are going to need redemption, because they cannot, some of them cannot remember a period of order, of law and order. You have young people who do not believe that you can actually get an opportunity without knowing someone. Yeah. Because they do not know a single friend who has got a job without knowing someone. Yeah. They've applied and applied to get into the police and the army, and the people who end up in the police and the army are they connected. You see, so I think that we were reckless. We were careless with a good thing. We were careless with our country, and I hope the lesson we have learnt is never ever to be careless. We should not be careless even now with President Hichilema. You know, like from day one, President Hichilema and his cabinet, we must ensure that we understand that these are politicians, but they are there to run the country for us. So we must, that does not mean we make it impossible for them to govern, but we watch out, like you say, on corruption. Yeah. Because I've always said that there are people surely within UPND who were waiting. The reason they were fighting to get into office is because they envied the lifestyle of the PF. Yeah. It became understood that if you are a minister, you get rich. Yeah. You shouldn't get rich.
Became a norm. Yeah.
You shouldn't get rich from political office. How? Yeah. Because the Sahara doesn't allow you to get rich. But you have people in the UPND, I'm pretty sure, who are waiting to get into office to get rich. If we allow it, they will get rich.
Yeah.
You see, they will get inordinately rich. You have young people who were waiting to get into markets to take their turn at being violent. We've got to resist that. We've got to ensure that the laws we want, Public Order Act, access to information,
yeah.
Loopholes in the Constitution. We've got to look and ensure that the government passes these laws for us, not for themselves. We've never had a government that looks at the Constitution for the good of the country. Now, if we sit back and say, yes, we love Bali, we all voted for Bali, let's leave him alone.
Yeah.
We will wake up and we'll find maybe I doubt President Hichilema can be as bad as President Lungu. I really doubt. I mean, I don't think anybody can be that bad. But what I'm saying is we need to ensure that this government takes us as far as they can, running the country well. That is for us, because we have masses of poor people who in the last 10 years have been left out of governance, because all money was going into corruption, into these bridges, into this infrastructure that essentially was a conduit for corruption. So I think we as Zambians, our lesson here is that democracy is fragile. You know, the good of the country is fragile. Yes, by all means, give your governors and those in power room to govern. But you must be alert. And I really do hope that the young people who woke up at 2 a.m. to stand in the queue will be alert and ask informed questions. Not just this making noise on social media, anything making noise. No. You see, informed questions. Read up on the law. Read up on the Auditor General's report. Listen to the news. Engage your MP. Engage your councillor. Make sure they know who is in authority, which is you.
Tell me, we belabored in terms of coming up with a good constitution. Having said that, the constitution we had was not that bad. Okay, it gave the president a lot of power. But here's a president who was a lawyer, and he went on to try and, for lack of a better word, rep the constitution. Tell me, do we need a very good constitution, or do we need a good leader, or do we need both?
I think we need both, but you see, I think we do need good laws.
Yeah.
You see, in the absence, okay, let's say that the constitution as the PF wanted it had passed, Rule 10, would not have had these elections in the way they had. So we were able to ride on the constitution. You see, we were able to ride on the fact that you must have an election on the 12th of August. You must pass over power on this day and that day. So what the constitution and laws do is give you solid ground under your feet. Even if someone is abusing that constitution and the law, you know you have a starting point. You are saying you are abusing the law. You are stealing money, because the Public Finance Act says that you cannot take all public resources must go into Control 99. Okay? So that's what the Constitution says. Even when people are not putting all the money into the consolidated fund, they are breaking a law. It's a place for we as civil society and other people, citizens, to speak. So if you notice, we in civil society kept harping on the law. You've broken this law, President Lungu. You've broken this, you've broken this, you've broken this. The young people who turned out to vote, it was long years of silent work by civil society. You know, we met, I think our organization probably spoke to about 15,000 young people face to face and on social media. You have others, you had Action Aid, you had everybody working with these young people. You need information. You need to, when you're speaking to them, you need to start from saying, the Constitution says you deserve this. The youth policy says you deserve this. So we should never ever underestimate the importance of a strong constitution written for the people, because that is what protects you when you have a wrong government like we had with President Lungu. And then, of course, we also hope that we have good people who do not try to hijack the constitution like pretty smart people in the PF try to do. You see, so well, they can try to hijack it, but the rest of you can stand up and say, no, you won't, because we like the law the way it is. Now imagine in the absence of a law. I'll give you the example of a weak law we have, the pardoning of the president. Very weak law. You see. So the outgoing president just sits down and starts ticking off his friends, who, and
some of the murderers.
Yes, most of them murderers. Yeah. So he pardons people where the whole country is shocked. Why has this person been? Why are these two Chinese pardoned who brutally murdered a Zambian? What is the logic? What is the understand? What exactly is happening? Now you see, he did it lawfully. That is the problem with absence of laws. Which is why when you're writing laws, you write laws. Actually, when you're writing laws, you write laws as if you're going to have bad people in power. Yeah. You don't write laws as if you're going to have good people in power. Which is the mistake, again, I say Mwanawasa made. Because President Mwanawasa looked at himself and said, Constitution is not exactly urgent because I have goodwill for the country. Yeah. But much of what has happened since Mwanawasa comes from him refusing to have a good constitution in place. Had he given us a constitution which, for example, gave us a running mate, would not have ended up with Banda. You see what I mean? And he probably would not have put in Banda as his president, vice president. So you see what I mean? You can have a very good person in any organization, but if you don't have the guidelines coded, all you are waiting for is for a President Lungu to come into office. And then he will show you all the loopholes.
Absolutely. Which he did.
Which he did.
Tell me again, President Chiluba tried the third term. I mean, I'm glad you guys pushed and threw out the Bill 10, but President Lungu succeeded with the third term, which Chiluba failed. How did this guy manage?
Because it was very different. Chiluba wanted to absolutely change the constitution at the end of a two 5-year terms. President Lungu, to be fair, was really up in the air. It depended. It was a question of interpretation. Yeah. And those who interpreted it to say he could go for a third term, you can't really say they are wrong. Yeah. It was a question of interpretation because you either decided that once you amended the constitution, it applied even to the president in office, or you decided, like most people believe, that because he was elected under the other constitution, his term had to end there. So because of that question of interpretation, he was able to go through. On the other hand, I think Zambia is better off for having voted him out than prevented him from standing. Because had we prevented him from standing, would have heard, for example, we prevented him from standing, President Hichilema comes and wins, would have said, he won because Lungu did not stand. Absolutely. You see, now President Hichilema comes into office and can say, I stood, I defeated him, okay, and I have a mandate. No president in our history has had the kind of mandate that...
It's amazing. It's basically the rainbow, this.
Yes, the kind of mandate that President Hichilema has. He better use it well. Absolutely. Because he has no excuse. President Hichilema has no excuse. He was given absolute mandate by the people of Zambia. You know that if there are a lot of things that aligned for him, President Hichilema, a lot of things that aligned for him. One, for example, was the fact that a lot of people who would have made all these alliances, the Kambwili, who left. Yep. Do you know that if these people were still there, GBM, Kambwili, they would have said, we are the ones who gave him the numbers he got from Muchinga. We are the ones who gave him the numbers that he got from... Right now, nobody gave President Hichilema the numbers. Nobody. Just the people. Not even his alliance partners. Just the people. The people decided this is the person we want. So President Hichilema had better perform because the trust he's been given is different from anybody else. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that yes, President Lungu, probably most people think he should not have stood, but it is fortuitous for Zambia that he did stand, because the president who then defeated him, so he doesn't have a ghost, he doesn't have a ghost in his back and who keeps saying, if I had stood, I would have beaten you. You see what I mean? And so I think that's where we end up here.
We've been talking about a lot of issues that permeated during Lungo's presidency, those who spoke up were brutalized. You decided that you still had to fight these ills through Alliance for Community Action. You were brutalized. Your life was in danger. Again, I ask, what was going through your mind? Why were you endangering your life when people just stayed mum and watched and suffered in silence?
We only have one country, and I don't really like being in exile. I don't really like being a foreigner. Yeah. We had to save this enterprise. Yeah. And Zambia is such a beautiful country. I always say to people, my friends abroad, is that there is nowhere under the sun I want to live rather than Zambia. Yeah. I lived many years abroad, and every day of those years abroad was wanting to come back home. Yeah. So I genuinely believe that we are people who've been granted a beautiful country, yeah. And the best thing about our country is the people. Yeah. Zambians are laid back, they are easy on the soul. It's just nice to be here. You look at the memes going around. You laugh at nonsense. It's not many countries that are like us.
Absolutely.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
But also, there are times you just find yourself in this space, and I suppose myself, the Alliance for Community Action, other people in civil society, you have Pilato, you have Linda, you have Michael Zuru, you have Bototo, you have certain people who just, I don't think it's even bravery. You just thought to yourself, this is where I am, put your head down. Mm-hmm. And from what I read from others in civil society and other actors is that none of us even looked up and said 2021. You just kept your head down and decided that if you see what I mean. You thought to yourself, let's do what needs to be done. Ultimately, Zambians made themselves proud. You see, what we thought as civil society, and we would have meetings, we'd sit down and have meetings. The way civil society works is that there are some of us maybe who are more vocal, others are less vocal. But we worked together. So some of us would speak, but we'll be working on the research done by people who are quieter and maybe less known. But ultimately what we thought was that if we can get the young people to understand why this is not normal, if we get them to understand why they should not accept that a bursary that is due to them should go to a minister's child, they should understand why 4242 is wrong, understand why maid theft is wrong, they should understand why they can't just understand that a country this rich, they should be poor. Maybe they will come up and stand and vote. Yeah. You see, and that is what it was. I think it was simply thinking someone has to stand up. And if all of us decide not to, then what happens?
Before we came on there, you talked about, I've gone through this and replayed, my fears. Did it cross your mind that these guys could win? And did you prepare yourself with the eventuality? What could have happened, not just to this country, but you, Pilato, the Lindas, the Zulus, all that? Did it cross your mind?
I refused to think about it. Twice I've refused to think about it. Bill 10 and this time. So what we would say in the office, and our office is a crazy space. We laugh about serious things. But what we would say is, if we consider that the PF will win, we'll become so debilitated. Your whole energy will so my mind would just freeze at the idea that PF could win. And I just thought, you know what I mean? Yeah. Let's do what we must. It's the same thing with Bill 10. I used to get a lot of phone calls from journalists and they'd say, okay, what are you going to do if Bill 10 passes? And I used to say, if Bill 10 passes, there's no Zambia. So for now, just allow us to prevent Bill 10 to pass, to try. If it passes, we'll deal with what happens afterwards. Because can you imagine, if PF had won, would be sitting here trying to start all over again, saying to Zambia for 242 corruption, stand up, Public Order Act, cadres. What could you say to Zambians who have put so much energy to voting? Even think of civil society. It's been 5 years of difficult work. It's been 5 years of going to Masawombwe and the police officer coming to you and saying, leave Masawombwe. What have we done wrong? You've done nothing wrong, but the cadres will beat you. That's been our work. You know, you are in Nyimba, and this chief who's invited you says, you know, I really enjoy what you're saying, but the cadres are on their way, or the police are on their way. It's been that kind of work. What we decided, I think, as civil society was, let's do what we can. Come 13 August, if these people are in office, God help Zambia. And all we can say is, on the day, you know, when I heard that people were sleeping on the queue, I knew. You know, like it was at that point when, you know, my heart said, maybe PF will win by rigging, but they're not winning fairly. You know, because nobody sleeps on the queue to vote for the incumbent. If you see what I mean. So once Zambia, I'm very proud of Zambians. You know, like ultimately, who delivered this? It was the people. It's the same thing, like ultimately, who delivered Bill 10? It was those MPs. So all of us worked against Bill 10, but ultimately, if that group of MPs that refused to vote for Bill 10 had not refused, all our work would have been useless. It's the same thing with the elections. No matter what any of us did, if the Zambians had not stood up and said no, it meant nothing. So I think Zambians should really give themselves a pat on the back.
About post 12th of August, you know, soon. But prior to that, with all these ills we're talking about, the odds that were against PF, they were still very confident. There was a president saying he's going to win by 500,000 votes. He's going to beat this guy, and we'll imprison him immediately after that. My God, first, where was this confidence coming from? And come 12th of August, they are outwitted by the people. First, where was this confidence coming from? Why did they become so myopic? Why?
I have no proof, but I think they were trying to rig. Now, this is totally unevidenced. This is guesswork. But
it has nothing to do with whatever record they are.
Because it has nothing to do with the record. Because it was quite clear that Zambians were unhappy. It was quite clear the economy was hard. You know, like you could be a person like you and I who has a job, and suddenly food, you know, your food bill begins to hurt. You know, food should never hurt if you have a job. You know, what you should worry about is maybe things like rent, maybe school fees, but not food. You see what I mean? So when you start buying a tray of eggs and you're telling the children, you know, you can't eat an egg a day, or that kind of thing in the home, you're discussing sugar and cooking oil, and you have a solid job, it's a problem. So the economy was on its knees, but the cadres, I don't think these guys understood the extent to which cadres hurt them. But because they had silenced Zambians and bullied Zambians so much, Zambians withdrew. They didn't speak out, but their anger against being frisked and being harassed by cadres was a lot. All that, you know, these days I entertain myself by watching PF rallies. Sometimes when like I go back and I listen to Antonio Mwanza, I go back and listen to Tutwa, I listen to the president, and I think, how can a campaign be so wrong? How can a campaign read its people so poorly?
No message.
No message. Yes. So I think that ultimately the arrogance, you know, power and incumbency does give you a certain arrogance, and also you know how Zambians can lie to you. Zambians are very good at lying to you. They were getting the money from them and that kind of thing. So that arrogance came from there. But I also am almost certain they tried to rig. But how do you rig against 1 million votes? So on the day of the election, when all those people turned out, it's either the. I'm hoping somebody one day will write a book and tell us what happened really on the day. But I think the vote protection mechanism was very strong from the UPND, and also just the sheer numbers made it difficult to rig.
Let's talk about the 12th of August and the announcement of the results. First, you saw, people queuing up at night, and you had an inkling that this is change I'm witnessing. I'm witnessing in a history. Then the result is announced. Where were you?
In my living room.
Oh my God. Alone?
I was alone, yes. So the result was announced. Two things happened. One, my thoughts went straight to my colleague who had died, who we had worked so hard to do this, Bono Omwewa. And at that moment, because we used to talk a lot about what we'd do if the PF lost, and he used to say about how you'd be just mad, you'd have to stop him. Okay, so I think the immediate thought was, how could you miss this? How could you miss this moment? And then the next thing was, can't be true. You're like, how? For a couple of days, even afterwards, it was, did we do it? How did we defeat Kampiongo's armory, those cameras in the street, IG, how did we defeat that voter registration that seemed so unfair? How did we defeat all that? To this day, I still wonder, how? You see, because the odds were stacked up against us. When we talk about rigging, the PF rigging plan was not all about the day only. No. Bill 10 was part of trying to rig. That armory they bought, was dressing our
voter registration.
Yes. Cancelling the voter registration. Yes. Dressing our policemen like gorillas thing was trying to frighten us. Putting the army on the streets was trying to frighten us. Voter registration in the rainy season, refusing to register over 3 months. So essentially gassing, fire, all those things, and essentially tribalism, trying to divide us as a people. A lot had been put into making sure that that was a harmful government would stay in place. So when it was announced, and especially hours later and the next day, I thought to myself, I don't know how it happened. Even now, actually, when I think about it, when you have conversations with friends, is how did Zambians, so passive, so peaceful, defeat this? A good friend of mine, we were driving around, I think a couple of days later, when it was quite clear, before the announcement, but it was quite clear already that the UPND had won. So we're looking at the people going down towards past Bauleni, and my friend says, these Zambians, look at them. They are plaiting hair, and they are selling tomato, and they're looking very quiet, as if it's not them who just savaged the president. So Zambians came out and went back and were silent. It is. I'm very proud. I'm very proud to be Zambian right now. One, we did not destroy our country. We could have destroyed our country. We could have rioted because things became so bad. Terrorism became so bad that Zambians could have just gone up, picked up stones and just rioted. But they stayed quiet, each one saying to themselves, 12th August is coming. That is something that we as a people should be very proud of, that we held our democracy and we said, what I can do while saving my country, I will. And so, yes, on that day, that's how I felt.
Brilliant. Wow. This is Frank on Camnet, and I'm talking to Laura MITI. What can I say? Pushes good governance, and she's part of the Alliance for Community Action. When we come back, we spend some time talking about what has developed since then. Of course, there was the inauguration of the new president. What are some of the major issues that came out of there? Join us very shortly.
The Camnet October Conference is fast approaching. To participate in the forthcoming conference, you're required to book your seat by paying 750 kwacha per person per day. Date 1st and 2nd October 2021. Venue, the Healing Word Ministries International in Ibex Hill. Guest speakers include Professor Reda, Professor Munkumba, Mr. Nkuruma Kalaluka, Dr. Musonda, Dr. Sitima, Anthony from USA, Dr. Mwale, Honorable Bob Sichinga, Elias Bondela, and your hosts, Pastors Victoria and Moses Chiluba.
You can also participate via Zoom at 300 kwacha per day.
Make your payments through mobile money. For MTN 096 296 5883. For Airtel 097 975 3010. Our banking details are 913 000 182 5325. Stanbic Bank, Kablonga branch.
For those living abroad, make payments via Wild Remit. The deadline for payments will be 28 September 2021. Any late payment made after 28 September will attract a penalty fee of 200 kwacha per person.
Africa is rising to a new dawn of integrity and accountability. Are you tired of being swindled or buying fake or illegal properties? Would you like to sell or buy genuine property? Would you like to list your property on both local and international market? Don't waste your time. Call the professionals, the SGK Properties on +260 762 166 018. SGK Properties. Your business assurance is our priority.
This is Frank On Camnet. My guest, Laura MITI, Alliance for Community, Action. The inauguration, I know a number of, governance issues were tabulated that the president made reference to. I know that the balloons were available. I know, that the doves boycotted because they wanted to be corrupted. But this president says no to corruption, zero corruption. We're talking about corruption, hopefully, later on in the program. But I took one thing from that speech, and I've deliberately picked on that because of the organization that you represent, Alliance for Community Action. The president said it's not about transfer of power. It's about transfer of leadership, because power belongs to the people. And I know you've made reference to that, and the people exhibited that on the 12th of August. The key question is, how significant is this, and how are the Zambians in this new dispensation going to exercise the power that they exercised on the 12th of August, the power now, the need to exercise to change the direction of governance in this country?
I think from the Alliance for Community Action, public money, public resources is the most important power.
Yeah.
You see, we have governments ultimately so that they can manage our resources and equitably and prudently, and ensure that those resources translate to an improved life for all of us, especially the weakest. For me, what I really want to see is improvement at the bottom. I keep saying this. I want to see improvement at the very lowest level of Zambian life. So I would like to see the poorest Zambians have better water. And when I say better water, I'm not even saying that the poorest Zambians should each have a tap. I think the poorest Zambians should have a borehole within walking distance. We can afford that. Okay, because if you go to Zambia, to most areas in Zambia, their biggest problem is water. So they should have safe drinking water, which translates to women not spending hours and hours, women and children not spending hours and hours looking for water. I want feeder roads. So feeder roads are huge if you live in the rural areas. Because of broken feeder roads, rural Zambians cannot transport their produce, fail to go to schools and hospitals in the rainy season. It's just madness if you look at the state of feeder roads. A distance that should take 45 minutes can take you 4 to 5 hours. The reason why I think that feeder roads, for example, and water, and then add schools. When it comes to schools, I would like the poor child not to sit in a class of 100.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Even if before we reach 40 and 30, they should think they should have books, teacher, chalk. That's all. I'm not even asking for computers. But the poorest child should have a fair chance at using education to leave that poverty. All these things I have said are not expensive.
Yeah.
Boreholes are not expensive, especially if you are government, because you are contracting in volume, bulk. You see, the PF had a way of upending this, putting this upside down. Instead of paying less, they would pay more. Government should pay less, because even if someone is making 50 ngwe on a bottle of water, but you are buying 1 million bottles of water, they are making 500,000 kwacha profit. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So you should be able to ensure that when government decides to give people water, get fuel in graders and grade people's roads. When life changes at the bottom, life changes for all of us, because there are millions at the bottom. And right now, the way we are running our country is, if you have a job, you have so much pressure from all your relatives who are unemployed, but some of them is not even unemployed. Even those in the village who, if they got their fertilizer, they had a feeder road, they had water, could feed themselves, are sending phone calls to Lusaka. It's impossible to ensure that my poor relative has, if they have an extra 50 kwacha a day, that 50 kwacha translates to 1 phone call less to me. Okay, so we must ensure that the poor people who queued up to vote for President Hichilema, that's where change should happen. Right now, I know that the middle classes are again waiting to be the ones who benefit.
Yeah.
That's what always happens in Zambia. MMD benefited the middle classes, even you and me. You know, we were cheese and whining. Lusaka was a wonderful place to be, you know. But while we were cheese and whining in Lusaka, while we were having all manner of breads and pedicures, just living the good life. You know, when you Zambians say it was good during MMD, they always forget that even during MMD, those in Mufumbo with no water had no water.
Yeah.
Those in Nyimba with no schools had no schools. I would like President Hichilema to direct our resources to making life decent and livable at the bottom. And even the money we have, if we just save money from corruption, the money that used to go to corruption, we can make sure that first line drugs are in hospitals. We can make sure that there's basic water, basic schooling, basic roads. You asked me about power. For me, that's what power is.
Yes.
You see, because if President Hichilema says that leadership is what he has inherited, leadership is for who put him in power. Leadership should change the lives for the majority. So what he says should not be rhetoric.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want another president who gives us rhetoric.
Yeah.
We want to see these slow incremental changes. And you know, the changes will not be massive. We just do not have the kind of money for the massive thing. But at the bottom, life can change. I'm very sure that at the bottom, life can change just by us ensuring that, one, we cut the kind of excesses that happen at the top. You see, you don't need VXSs for ministers, and you don't need 3 of them for ministers. You don't need the kind of delegations we have had. We don't need conferences in expensive places. You can have conferences and workshops in actually government offices. Better to increase the salaries a little bit for civil servants, but all this money, because you see, civil servants believe in making money on trips that they don't need and all. If we can save money from corruption, one, but even more important for ACA is we need to stop legal waste. In Zambia, legal waste is worse than corruption because legal waste never comes up in the FIC report. Legal waste never comes up in the Auditor General's report. Legal waste is the number of people in the presidential delegation. You can't. It's not corruption, but it gobbles up millions. Legal waste is the number of police officers standing on the road every time the president goes to the airport. You see, legal waste is all that fuel that escorts the president to the airport. Legal waste is buying water at 5 kwacha when you could have bought it at 3 kwacha. If we plug legal waste, if we stop ministers from replacing furniture that's not broken, and all that, just that saving can grade all the feeder roads. You see, I always said under PF that one flyover bridge in Lusaka, just one, could have graded all our feeder roads. One.
Absolutely.
Why did we take money to fly over bridges in Lusaka when we had not touched the feeder roads? You see, and then after 10 years, if we are happy with President Hichilema, then the middle classes will start again. Hey, it's because of the way the poor vote. Hey, the poor have voted now. They voted for President Hichilema. Can that vote translate to improved lives for them? For once, please, Zambia. For once.
Let me ask you, 2 questions rolled into one related to the power, that you have made reference to. Would you love the access to information bill enacted this time round, because it gives you and me, and it's been misunderstood, gives me and you an opportunity to get into some minister and say, excuse me, can I see how you spent this money? Related to that, your expectations to the men and women who are in parliament today, who have been put there by the people.
Yes, I would really love the access information law to pass. And access information, people think access information is to tell us about secrets. We must know where the channels are. We must know how many tags we have. No. Every country has secrets. Every country has confidential information. Access to information allows we as the ACA to go to the council and say, how much money should you collect in rates? How much did you actually collect? Of what you collected, how much percentage went to buying chlorine? As it is, you can go to a school and say, how many desks do you have here? They'll say, go to the PS. I need a letter to go to the PS for you to give me that information. So the information citizens want is the information that allows us to participate in governance. It's the information. We should know the truth about 4242. Access to information will allow us. You see, we need to know, access to information will allow us to know what was the investigation? How did gassing, how did that thing go? I am very interested in knowing who the young man who died in Chingola during gassing is. I don't know why, but that young man, I want to know his name. I want to know why he died, and I want his family compensated, because I believe that child died for no reason. He was sacrificed because Charity Katanga and so I think at the time the police needed, maybe even the political leaders needed to pacify the people. So you shoot this young boy, you allow him, this young man, you allow him to bleed out. You don't tell us his name. You don't tell us what he was carrying. Access to information would allow us to find out things like that. All right. So I think for us, it's extremely important that this happens.
We've talked about Parliament. Let's talk also about human resource institution vis-a-vis to corruption. First, what should this government be doing to all these people are coming up now on daily basis, perceived corruption? How should this be handled? That's part of the equation. Going forward again, how should corruption, be addressed? 3, again, related. These institutions, ACC, DEC, they suddenly have been given political will now, okay? And they're very excited about what is, going on. And it's a loaded questions. Do we change how these institutions operate? For example, FIC doesn't have the right to prosecute, which other FIC in other countries, have. For example, again, FIC has the right to repossess assets, which DEC has. Do we have all these guys repossess? It's a loaded question, but I know you understand what I'm trying to say. Basically, it's how do you address corruption vis-a-vis all the institutions and human resource I've made reference to?
For me, 2 things. We must deal with historical corruption. I mean, like, the country's treasury has just been completely robbed.
Yeah.
So we must get our money back.
Yeah.
The aim of historical corruption should be to get as much of the money we can get, whether it's in real estate or it's in actual money. But I agree with President Hichilema that there must be investigations. You see, we've had too many witch hunts. And usually you spend more money in the investigation than in getting the money back. So I think that there must be very strong, very, very thorough investigation. And yes, what powers DEC, ACC and FIC need. Together the powers are there. You actually do not need FIC to prosecute if DEC and ACC are doing their job.
Right.
So the problem is not that FIC cannot prosecute. It is that when they handed over the cases to the police and ACC, they didn't. But working together as a cluster, they can. So let FIC investigate and pass on matters to those. Otherwise, you're going to need prosecutors in all these things. I think it's a bit of a waste. You see, so you can have prosecutors in ACC, prosecutors at the DPP. But if everybody is doing their part, and with the eyes on the fact that we are trying to protect resources, these resources that we need for those boreholes I'm talking about, these resources we need for schools, then it works. The second point for me is prevention. We cannot only be focusing on historical corruption while ongoing prevention is, and that is a problem we've had in Zambia, where government after government tells you, Chiluba was telling us about Kaunda and 6 billion, whether it was true or not, I don't know. Manawasa told us about Chiluba. It's been going on like that. These ones would say, Banda was corrupt. What we want is for president. And while they were saying that, ongoing corruption was happening. We need to plug the holes. If you read the Auditor General's report, you will find companies that appear in every report for 5 years.
It's crazy.
How can the same company appear in the Auditor General report 5 times? That means that you are not plugging the holes. One of the first things that the Minister of Finance, the Presidency, the Minister of Home Affairs, the ACs, all these people, what they need to do, and the PSs especially, the controlling officers, because it's not in administrative levels, the controlling officers in ministries need to plug the holes through which money is coming out. This is about systems, internal controls. What's wrong with our internal controls that someone can steal 5 million? Some of the kind of stealing you see in the Auditor General's report is basic. It can't even happen in a CSO. It means that the internal controls are not firm and nobody cares about it. The internal audits are not working. Okay, so for me, I would like this government to concentrate as much on recouping our money as preventing going on. And I keep repeating this. There are people in the UPND who are just waiting to steal.
Yeah.
There is no angelic party on earth.
Absolutely.
There's no angelic party.
Yeah.
You know, maybe right now we are lucky because for the first time we've got a rich president. You know, for a long time we didn't want him because he was rich. But now you look at his house as a better child. I mean, if President Hichilema steals, he's mad. Because you see the boy
He's got everything.
He's got everything. So what is he going to steal for? So please, God, President Hichilema, if you want more, then we don't know what we can do with you. So the good thing with this is that if you have a president who himself does not need to build himself a house, does not need to pay school fees, maybe for once he can also have this clear worldview, because others were unable to prevent others from stealing because he also wants to build a house.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that President Hichilema will protect our money. We're not saying that our ministers should be poor. Our ministers obviously must have a car, must have a free house. We don't argue with that.
We're fine with that.
We're fine with that.
Yeah.
But we don't want millionaire ministers because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So prevention of these people going into power from becoming rich should be President Hichilema's focus, apart from recouping our money.
Let me ask you one thing. You alluded to investigations. If assume a number of these cases, or some of the cases, point to the former, president, do you subscribe to Parliament lifting his immunity?
Yes, but it must be clear. I do not want President Lungu's immunity lifted just to pacify people, just to make people feel good. You see, there are a lot of people who do not like President Lungu.
Yeah.
Okay, as a person, there's this need for vengeance.
Yeah.
Investigations are not about vengeance.
Yeah.
We must, if we are ever going to lift President Lungu's immunity, we must have the evidence.
Right.
And that evidence must be presented during the lifting of the immunity. We don't want it that, no, we've got secret evidence.
No.
If you don't have the evidence, then you failed. Leave him alone with his immunity. But if the evidence points to him either having stolen himself or facilitated the stealing we saw, then yes, we must lift the immunity. It's the same thing with all the other ministers, all the other people. And by the way, it's not only ministers. Civil servants were also stealing, like money was going out of fashion. In fact, much of the theft in Zambia happens at director level, PS level. In fact, even just civil servants, because it is the whole thing, inflating of projects has to happen with everybody else. We must have investigations. We must have full evidence. If that happens, unfortunately, President Lungu is going to have to face his day in court, because this is not about a personality.
Yeah.
And as a people, we need to stop ourselves from a sense of personal vindictiveness against people. What we want is, one, to use this punishment, to use corrective actions to prevent ongoing corruption. In the absence of corrective actions, if these guys go away with these Hollywood type of houses they've built, state law, the kind of estates development was going on in Zambia was impossible, given that our economy was on its knees.
Yeah.
How are we building all these things with no money, with an empty treasury?
Yeah.
Okay, so if any of these buildings came up using our money, we want them back. It is not because we want to destroy the soul of anybody. Yeah. It's just that it belongs to the people. And also we cannot go forward without dealing with this issue. But I repeat, it's not about personal vindictiveness with anyone.
Okay. Related to that, I hope I read correctly. I haven't confirmed with him. He's a friend of mine in the State Council, Musa Mwenye, and he joins others who are saying, why are you leaving these guys who served a corrupt government, and perhaps some of them were involved? Why are they still in office? Why are they even still working with you in the State House, wherever? Your comment on that?
I find it difficult to think that President Hichilema doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I'm very sure that he's going to surprise us. That's my sense. I don't think he's just sitting there and saying, allow these people.
Yeah.
Because so far his appointments have been very measured. You know, I've been very measured, I've been very well thought through.
Yeah.
I think that he probably needs these people in place in order to even find the evidence. And I also think that he's finding the evidence, but I don't know.
Yeah.
My sense is by the end of this week, we're going to have ministers in place, and we'll have forgotten how long it has taken us.
Yeah.
And I also think that nobody should be left in office that harmed the country. Again, it's not about wanting revenge. It's that we want a clean slate. More importantly, the people that then take over these positions, I hope President Hichilema is making it clear that it's not, you can't go there wanting to get rich. If you want to get rich, stay in private thing, go and buy a farm or do something. I'm just hoping that PS especially, you know, for me, I think ministerial positions are a waste. Most of it.
It's a PS with CEO.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could do it with 10 ministers and
2, 3, 4 PSs
reporting to 3 ministry PSs reporting to 1 minister.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't need so many ministers. You know, did you see that list that was going around with the 2030?
That's crazy.
What do you want all those ministers? What do you want all those ministers for?
That is crazy.
In a country that is battling, so we can start with a much smaller cabinet, but the best PSs possible. I also hope that the PSs...
I think there's some brilliant guys in this country.
Brilliant guys. Yeah. You know, and I'm also hoping that the PSs will largely rise through the ranks. You know, when you work with government, sometimes I've gone into this country and I've seen a DACO or a PEO, you know, you're doing some research and you think, this guy sitting here in Chipata is brilliant.
Yes.
You know? And you go somewhere and you find someone is sitting in a council and you think, my word, this is a Florida council. This child is brilliant. I think if we can promote people who have been through the ranks, that's how PS is supposed to be. PS is like general in the army.
Yeah.
You can't go and hire a politician and make them general in the army, because they need to have risen through the ranks and understand how the army works. So I'm hoping that President Hichilema will stop this thing of using PS position as a position to reward people. And I also maybe should say this. Office is not for reward.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say I did this, therefore I want a position. No.
Yeah.
A lot of people contributed in their own way to the change. What about the ones who queued? How are you going to reward them? Because ultimately, the ones who brought the change are the ones who queued. And it's not only across. Are we going to reward all those children with jobs? No. Yeah. If we can't reward the youth, if we can't reward the woman who stood up at 03 from Chawama to go and vote, then why does anybody else think they need a reward? So let's free President Hichilema to appoint the best people possible. Usually, especially for PS, the best people will rise through the ranks.
Okay.
And for minister as well, can we have people who we respect?
Okay, I'll be asking just 1 or 2 questions before we close, and I would like you to tell us what you expect when he opens Parliament on Friday. But before we do that, again, we're talking about institutions that are going to play a major role in this administration. What are expectations from the judiciary?
I'd like them to redeem themselves.
Yeah.
You know, the judiciary went crazy, what I say.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know. I don't know what they were so scared of. Because the judiciary, you know, judges have got the greatest security of tenure in this country. Yeah. It's very difficult to fire a judge. But whoa, the Concord judgments, the laziness in the Concord.
Yeah.
You know, like, they'll give you judgments on a fundamental issue and not give you the judgment, or the judgment will be 2 pages. You know, you think just, what are you thinking? So our jurisprudence is so weak because the judges are lazy. Sorry, judges, I don't mean to think, but you see. So I'm hoping that read up on the law, stand for the weak, do not be bribed. Do not change President Lungu for President Hichilema. You know, like, so after President Lungu goes, you now start passing judgments for the UPND government. No. Look at our friends in South Africa. Without their judiciary, you still have a President Zuma in office.
Yeah.
So democracy is protected by these arms of government. If Parliament does its bit, like Parliament did for us under Bill 10, remember? Parliament saved us on Bill 10. But the judiciary was really weak.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that they have tenure of office, that they are sorry for what they did, and they've seen that the country was not thinking like them, but above all, they need to do their work.
You've just hit the nail when they say some of them should say sorry. Would you like President Lungu to say sorry, and even others? Some of them were said there. And would you allow them to come in the open and say, you know what, I think we messed up?
I wish they would. I wish they take us into our confidence, and if not saying sorry, they should act sorry.
Yeah.
Because right now they're not acting sorry. You know, President Lungu talked about divisions and tribalism just now. I don't know if it was rightly quoted, but President Lungu should keep quiet about tribalism, because he fueled it. Okay, so there's sometimes maybe vocalizing sorry is difficult, but acting sorry is important. For example, I think former Minister Given Lubinda should apologize to us about Bill 10, Tutuangulue, Mundubile, these people who pushed such a harmful constitution.
Saying 2 million is nothing.
2 million is nothing. But I don't think we want them to queue up to say sorry. I think they should act sorry. And acting sorry should not only because they're out of power, but I hope they read the memo of 12th August. You see, if you see so many people come out to take you out of power, you've done something wrong. So you should be apologetic for what you did to the country.
Related to that, I think we've only got 5 minutes before we close. We'll close with expectations into Parliament, and basically expectations from the Zambian people and this government, but not before I ask you this, and I think I take it very seriously. What's going through your mind when you see some people who really did bad, insulted the Zambians, were already positioning themselves? You hear what they've been saying, that these guys want to find a loophole and cross over to the other side. Does it upset you?
I just think they've got weak backbones. You know, like I think it's embarrassing. Aren't you embarrassed?
Yeah.
You know, so it's okay to be sorry and show remorse, like we say, but don't try to cross over. And also, the crossing over goes back to what I was saying. President Hichilema surely has enough people around him who are in the UPND and maybe who are also in other spaces to appoint. As much as possible, I hope he avoids appointing some of these people who harm Zambia greatly. But it's not only up there. I've seen people, cadres, I've seen people who were getting contracts from PF, suddenly dressed in red. They were at the inauguration. And very annoying. Again, it's because they believe that money will still flow. This is not about love. It's not because they love President Hichilema. It's because they believe that money will still be flowing and they want to be connected to the pipeline. How you stop those people is just to show that money is going to go to services, money is going to go to the Zambian people. Then they will silently stop. But as long as, if the UPND government becomes corrupt, if the UPND government begins to give out contracts according to patronage, then those people will. And by the way, I will also say this. I also believe that if someone supported PF, but they have a legitimate business, don't kill their business. UPND should not kill PF legitimate businesses because they are employers. The reason why our country has failed to develop is because we keep killing the businesses of anybody who does not support government. But those ones in government are busy stealing anyway, and their businesses are not real. So if you look if you look at what happened with these people in power, look at their lodges. Their lodges got all government business, okay? Which means that now that government has changed, that lodge is going to die. That's not how it's supposed to be. If government distributes its workshops to everybody, whether you're UPND or you're in PF, it means that you have a real economy. They have to compete on the basis of their quotations, of services, of the quality of their services. So let's not go out trying to destroy everybody that was connected to PF.
Very quickly, 1-2 questions, and then we'll end. Keep on saying that. And I mean, the way about so many things to discuss. One, what's gonna happen to the many political parties? Some really, the performance was insignificant. What would you be telling them? And two, unprecedented petitions we could be, dealing with. Quickly deal with this before we close.
The petitions, people have said to me we should ask UPN not to petition. The problem with the last elections is that it was so unfair. So objectively, there are people who rightly deserve to petition.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it would be nice for them not to, but they deserve to petition. You can't say their petitioning is frivolous.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a few.
Fortunately, unfortunately, legally they are entitled.
Yeah, exactly. And there are a few, I think, PF MPs that won. No matter how you turn it, they won fairly. Yeah. Okay, but it wasn't fair. So people will petition. What I would hope is that it's done quickly. Like the courts will do it quickly, and that when we start having by-elections, we must not spend money. Let's not. Okay, not spend money. What I mean is, let's not blow government money on campaigns. Maybe we should have smaller, quiet campaigns at which we are not having the president going with a presidential jet against spending millions and millions of kwacha like we saw during the Lungu. The Lungu administration.
Yeah. The parties, a little some.
Oh, the parties. The parties. This. I don't think this election was a fair reflection on whether a party was.
They just wanted to remove.
People just wanted to remove President Lungu,
so they can reposition themselves.
And they did not want to waste their votes. So there are individuals there, I think, who, if they position themselves, would do well. You know what? In this by-election, some of them should stand as MPs. I've always thought that if we had party presidents in Parliament, our Parliament would
absolutely.
The quality of the debate would be very good, and also you position yourself better for the next election. So people like Harry Kalaba, I think, should try to get into Parliament. Never Chishala, Sean Tembo, all these guys. If they stood for an MP thing, knowing their party presidents, they can position themselves. But there are others there are some political parties where it's time to go. It's time to go. Yes.
All right. My final question is really 2 in 1. What are you expecting on Friday when President Hakainde addresses Parliament, addresses the nation through Parliament? That's going to be his maiden speech. And what are you expecting from the Zambian people and indeed the government? I think nice way of closing our interview.
I'm looking forward to listening to President Hichilema. Maybe it's because of how poorly President Lungu articulated himself, and I'm not talking about even just the verbalizing. It's because I just never knew what he thought. You see, so he just did not speak to us. I like how President Hichilema, even if he's reading a speech, it sounds as though he wrote it.
Yeah.
And
it sounds very presidential.
Yes, he has a grasp on issues. Yeah. So I think for the first time in many years, I'm looking forward to a president who's articulating his thoughts. And I'm hoping it's not, again, rhetoric and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm hoping it's a clear direction on service delivery, on these issues we're talking about, like corruption, constitution. I'm hoping he's going to set up 1, 2, 3, 4 issues we can expect him to do in the first year, second year.
And the young voters?
What is his housekeeping? Yes. What is his plan for the young voters? I'm also hoping, in terms of Zambians, I hope that, like me, they feel they are breathing easier. Whatever else happens from now, you are breathing easier. You can go into the market. I always used to say, what I want is a Zambian woman to be able to wake up at 04 and sell her tomato without being harassed. Because you see, our economy is so weak that we might never get to that last Make Mavuto who sells tomato. But at least she must not be harassed by cadres. She must be able to raise that 5 kwacha herself, and maybe then 10 kwacha and grow. So I'm hoping that Zambians, at the very least, are feeling proud that they've got back the oxygen within their lungs, and that they will hold this government to account, listen carefully, engage intelligently. The level of our debate became so poor. Go on social media. It was insults, answer you, which kind of thing, kind of thing. And stop stop this thing of when someone raises something, saying it's because you're opposition, because you're this. Let's engage. Already you can see on social media that the level of debate has gone up.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Zambians will hold this government to account, allow opposition to hold government to account, but that it will be informed and intelligent, and that indeed what we voted for on August 12 will happen.
And it's going to be a beautiful house. The leader of government business is a woman.
Yes.
The speaker is a woman.
Is a woman, yes. Yeah. I'm talking about the speaker. I'm hoping that
another MITI.
MITI. I'm hoping that Speaker MITI will be firm but fair. The worst thing we've had in the last parliament and the last two parliaments is this thing where the speaker is an extension of the ruling party. I hope that Speaker MITI will allow the opposition their space to ask questions and will force government to answer them. You know, don't let government be frivolous with the time they're given in prime. A minister must sound intelligent and informed, and if they are not, Speaker had better censure them. So I'm hoping that Speaker MITI will ensure that the ministers are earning their good salaries and their VXs, if they're getting VXs, and that the opposition are also allowed to hold government to account. And then we'll start enjoying watching Parliament.
And Alliance for Community Action continues.
Alliance for Community Action, we are very happy that we will now be able to go deep into the rural areas, which is what we want to do. We want to go deep into the rural areas, and we won't have to go have a DC say, why didn't you come and greet me? Why didn't you this and why didn't you that? We are hoping that we can do our work, and our work will continue just where we stopped, helping Zambians understand their right to ask questions.
I thank you for making an appearance on Frank and Cap.
Thank you very much, Frank, for having me.
You're welcome. Laura MITI from Alliance for Community Action. Now let me take this opportunity to thank the members of the Alliance, the members of the NGOs. I mean, our good friend Pilato. It was a worthy fight, my friend. You know, God bless you. God bless everybody who's been part of this new dawn. But the biggest accolade is to the people, the Zambian people, who fought so hard, who woke up in the wee hours of the morning to ensure that their vote made a change. And the change you made. Like I keep on saying, this is just the beginning. Continue doing your very best, and God will do the rest. I'm Frank Mutabila, on behalf of Laura MITI, saying, God bless you all. We love you. On behalf of my director Isaac and the crew and the production team, Pastor Chiluba and the wife, we love this country. You know what? God planted us here for a reason, because He knew that we're special children of God. And to the UPND government, especially President Hakainde Hichilema, you told us, we didn't tell you. Okay, we gave you a lead, and then you took the lead and you told us. It's not about change of power, because power belongs to the people. It's about the leadership. You know where the power is, and you know what power can do. God bless you. This is Frank Mutabila. Good night to you.